Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is your T-shirted historian, and I'm going to have a couple of guests coming in to talk with me here in a minute. But yeah, thought I'd come say hello to everybody. Not a normal time but a normal day to do a Dungeons and Discussions. It is Tuesday. The time is a little weird because, well, had to call in sick today. Not feeling great, but feeling good enough that I want to talk about some D&D related stuff. And hey, Das Wolfen, Victor, Captain Fandom Nerd. Hey, how are you guys? Victor, if you want me to drop you a link, you let me know, okay, buddy? All right. We should be having Mr. David Guile and Grim popping in pretty soon to talk about this. But yeah, thanks to David's lively discussion that went on in the Week in Geek the other day about XP and advancement, I thought might be a good topic to talk about. And Grim kind of agreed with me, so hopefully he will be along shortly. And I'll drop Victor a link real quick. But I'm okay running the show by myself. I can handle it, but it's always good to have more people to talk to about it. So, yeah, mainly when you get to talking about XP and advancement and character advancement, all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of systems to do it, but it kind of falls into one of two categories these days. You either get XP, experience points for stuff that you do, or you have milestone leveling. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of milestone leveling. I know that fifth edition has a lot of rules that talk about milestone leveling, but to me, it always kind of seemed arbitrary. It's just kind of like when you do this, you get a level. And my first experience with milestone leveling was when I started playing. What was it? I was going to say Waterdeep Dragon Heist, but that's not it. Dungeon of the Mad Mage, right? So Dungeon of the Mad Mage, your characters go into this 20 level dungeon that's underneath a bar, because that's a thing somebody would do, is build a bar on top of a mage's 20 level dungeon. I mean, how come the monsters in there don't climb out into the bar? How is it they have an ecology and all this kind of stuff? It doesn't make much sense to me, but I digress. Anyway, so yeah, we're into our second or third game. We just killed a room full of manticores and some other stuff, and I asked the DM. I said, "So hey, by now we've probably gotten enough XP that we should be leveling up." And he says, "Well, yeah, but we're using milestone on this." And I said, "Well, what's milestone?" And he said, "Well, when you get a level every time you clear one of the 20 levels of the dungeon." I said, "So we have to completely clean an entire level of the dungeon in order to advance one level?" He said, "Yeah." And at that point, I said, "You know what? I'm out," because I thought that was some throwed off stuff, to use an old Turner phrase. Throwed off. I mean, you guys remember that one? You know, I mean, maybe it was just that particular dungeon that just put that bad taste for milestone leveling in my mouth. But I played another fifth edition game with a DM who was using milestone leveling. Only he wasn't really clear on what the milestones were. So it was just kind of a case of kind of whenever he felt like it, we got a level. And I didn't always think that was fair. And I'm sure if I had looked at the 5th edition rules, I probably would have pointed out, it's like, hey, you're not supposed to do milestone leveling that way. But it was his game. I was just a player in it, and I wasn't going to go and argue with the DM because I'm old school. That's the first rule of old school DMing and playing is you don't argue with the DM because the DM is always right, or it's his game anyway. So yeah, my experiences with milestone leveling kind of suck, and can't say I'm a big fan of it. Now maybe if another DM did it a different way, I might enjoy it more. But here's one of my guests. Actually, I should say my co-host, Grim.
Hello.
Hello, how you feeling, bud?
Tired, exhausted,
But full?
but full. Yes, I very quickly made chicken and seafood fried rice.
Oh man, that's nice. And oh look, we've got a Victor.
Flight lice.
Flight
Yes.
lice.
Fried rice.
What is up, my homies?
Hey. I'm not usually on Euro time. I'm usually working, but I just happened to.
It's evening
home.
here. 7:37 right now.
All right. Well, David Guile should be joining us pretty soon because, like I said, he kind of opened this can of worms, and I'm hoping to discuss all this with.
I might have to take off without notice as I have to help someone create their character for Tabletop Plus Vampire this evening. So.
Uh-oh. Well, usually these only go for about an hour. Can you hang with me for an hour?
Well, depends when they show up. I will hang as long as I can, and if you're still going, I will come back.
Okie dokie. Hey, David.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yay.
I was dying from boredom doing tables in my book. I hate doing tables, so I was like, this is a nice distraction.
I haven't done any tables in my book, but I'm still writing out mechanics and things.
Yeah.
And I have not actually gotten to the experience stuff yet for how you advance. But that, advancement is kind of an important thing.
Definitely.
And here's the thing. It's like, there's so many different ways you could do it. You could get XP, but then are you getting individual XP? Are you getting group XP? Or is everybody using the same chart for XP? And if you're using the same chart for XP, are you using the fast leveling, the medium leveling, or the slow leveling?
Yeah.
There's arbitrary advancement where you just get a level every time you complete a session or whatever, like Shadow of the Demon Lord. And then, of course, there's milestone leveling, which is, you hit certain key elements of the plot points and all that, and you get a level.
Yeah. It's hard to say which one's the best option, because for me, at least, it all depends on system, on genre even. Just like what is your goal with the game? What is your intent? Are you doing like a story game? Is your game centered around dungeon crawls, around hex crawls? All of those influences how you should do XP, in my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's even like sub counts to XP too. It's like, should you get XP for gold, or does that encourage murder hoboism?
Yeah.
But it's experience points is one of the main levers we have to motivate player behavior. So if you want them to go out and slaughter things to get more powerful, then you'll want to give XP for killing monsters. If you want them to go exploring treasuries and also murder hoboing, then make it the money they collect.
Yeah.
If you want to encourage them to invest in the world around them or just blow their cash, then make it spent money. There's all these it's another way of encouraging genre emulation and motivation.
Godbound in particular is one of my favorites for this, because as demigods, money doesn't mean anything to you. You literally have so much money at your disposal that you can do just about anything. I mean, you could become a god of wealth and you could make money and buy anything you want to. Wealth doesn't even have a signifier in the game. It's just basically, it's like, oh, what do you want to spend? You have that kind of money available? Sure.
I've seen games where money like that is kind of like secondary, but the XP is instead based on like artifacts or like specific treasures. So like say you go into a dungeon and you find like the magic wand of the Ageless One or whatever. That's like an artifact, so that gives you like 5 XP or whatever.
Yeah. in Godbound's case, you get XP based on what you actually do, because what you're trying to do is build up your cultists to build up your religion. So it's kind of like investing in towns, building churches, establishing cults, things like that gives you XP. And it's like 1 point, but it's, you only need like 2 or 3 to go up every level. So leveling isn't that hard in Godbound. It's just as long as you've got characters who are motivated to continue to build their cult up, then that's fine.
One of the things in Feng Shui, which isn't a particularly experience or character modification heavy sort of game, was the idea that you would take over these dragon line nexus points, which is where you draw a lot of your power from. And that always struck me as an interesting way that you could both go about providing experience points and also justify in a game why people become so much more resilient and powerful in class and level games. Could just be because they're channeling more mystic energy or whatever through themselves by aligning themselves to these power points in different dungeons and holds and fastnesses and all of that kind of thing. So that might be an interesting way to tie the two together.
Yeah.
And Delver thinks XP by class is the best. I have to say I kind of tend to agree. I think a shifted XP chart for every class is actually a little bit better, especially where you have disparity between classes. Because, we all know that the mage at higher levels is just about unstoppable.
Until they
Well, maybe in like normal Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, most OSR and Dungeons and Dragons, yeah.
The way I'm writing my game right now is that everyone advances at the same time, because XP is based on like sessions and like RP rewards and stuff rather than like accomplishments. Because I've said this before, like my game is modern, so you can't really do like XP for gold, because like you might do a campaign where like there's no money at all, or you might do a campaign where you grab a duffel bag of a cartel guy and it has like 5 million in it. So
Well, but also getting XP for money found doesn't make any sense anyway, so
yeah.
I'm fine without that.
Well, David, what's your when you have characters, when you're running your game, what do you do to motivate your players to do stuff for XP?
Oh, I don't really motivate them for XP at all. They just explore dungeons and do things because that's the interesting part of the game. The XP is just kind of here's a little carrot at the end of it. I don't play RPGs like I want to get experience points. I just there's a dungeon, I want to explore it. Finding the money to me is its own reward. Finding secrets, information, seeing what the game's got in the store, overcoming challenges, that's its kind of own reward. The XP is just a gravy on top of that. I don't really chase the XP dragon.
No, I mean that's fair, but I mean I'm figuring your players probably like leveling up just like everybody else does.
Yeah, they do, but they get experience points from killing monsters or doing things in line with what their class is supposed to be doing. I've been for the playtest thing, doing second edition D&D's idea of if you kill monsters, everyone gets some. Actually, overcoming challenges in general is worth experience points. And then other classes get class specific awards. Like fighters get a little more for monsters killed. Wizards get more for spells cast. Clerics for miracles used. Rogue's been kind of the tricky one because I don't want to do. I know like Rifts had one for you get bonus XP for using skills, but I don't want to encourage a character like to spam skills for largely no reason. So I'm trying to find a tricky balance to that one, and that's also where you want to shift an experience table, because if you kill lots of monsters, fighters would level up. Everyone had the same table. Fighters would level up obscenely fast. Wizards would be a lot slower unless they got a bigger reward for casting spells. So you gotta. I think that's where the shifted table between classes would be useful. And then the money they get, that's just for buying stuff. They can, in my game, you can take monster parts, build your own gear, craft your own potions, not magical potions, alchemical stuff pretty easily. So they have every incentive to do this stuff in the first place, and also to increase crafting skills a lot of times, because then the fighter can just make his own masterwork sword, given enough time. So I haven't really found any need to go, okay, well, you guys got some money, so here's even more experience points on top of the pile.
Yeah. My GM, the one I've been playing under for, I got 20, well, actually over almost 30 years at this point. always just kind of like had a session XP thing where it's like, if you showed up to game, it was like, 500 XP every hour, or 1,000 XP every hour, or whatever. And, the leveling system we use is slow anyway, so it takes a lot of XP to grind up. But his whole deal is he didn't want to motivate people to do any one particular thing other than show up and participate. And that works for us.
No, that would be a good way to do it. Like you get XP by the hour. That encourages people to show up to play and also to play for longer periods of time.
Yeah. And that kind of works for me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Bonus XP if you don't have to pay for pizza. Sounds like a good idea too.
Flady said something interesting just now. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Session XP is a fairly equitable way to do it and encourages people to show up. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of do a blend of this, what he's saying. So I have like the session XP, and that like influences like your class. So, it's like, oh, I hit level 2. Now I get like a +1 to my 2 hit or whatever. But then I also have the background system, which takes the place of the skills. It's kind of like Scarlet Heroes, It's like I'm a spy, so I can do spy stuff. And those you can only really increase by like doing it in the game. So if you're doing a lot of spy stuff, like that session, the GM might be like, you know what, you did a lot of spy stuff, you obviously learned from the experience, here's a +1. Or you could say like, hey, I'm gonna take a month out and I'm gonna like learn some medic skills, and then the GM can be like, okay, you get a +1 to medic, you learn like a whole new background. So it's kind of like a bit more flexible like that.
Kevin Crawford, I think, actually said it at one point. He said, in general, you want to get you want characters to get a level every 2 sessions. And that's probably a decent route to go to. I mean, if you just make it a pat down rule, it's like, hey, every 2 game sessions you show up, you'll get a level.
How long are his sessions?
I have no idea.
Because if that was like when we used to play in our teens, where you'd meet up on the Friday, you'd stay over, and you'd play pretty much through to Sunday.
Yeah,
that's a good amount of gaming in, and then I could see justifying that. But once every 2 sessions seems a bit much for me.
Huh. Okay.
It's a little too fast.
But it depends. If your group only does like that type of games where it's like we end after 6 or 8 sessions and then we'd move on to something else, then yeah, sure, let them level up, let them have fun with those characters. But if you're actually planning on like doing like a multi-year like extended like single campaign, then yeah, it should be slowed down.
I have seen people do sort of epic timeline quests where each adventure is a season or a year, and so every new session or new adventure they would go up a level for the next one. That kind of makes sense because you've got all that downtime in there for these things to happen, training and so on. That works.
It's like in Adventures in Middle-earth, that Mirkwood campaign, like literally spans like 30 years, I think. Like there's actually rules to play your character's children if you're like a human, because you might get too old. So
there's that in Pendragon as well, and Birthright, which I kind of wish they'd redone, and I kind of glad they didn't redo Birthright.
Oh, does Wolf, and you say you couldn't do that for getting levels based on the number of sessions is too restricting?
It's too arbitrary to me.
It's arbitrary.
Like, okay, we play for like 1 hour or 4 hours, doesn't matter, it's a session. That would kind of bug me.
My question is like, how strict do you make the rules? Like, I just kind of like giving guidelines, and whatever the GM decides to do in his own game, like that's fine. If the GM says like a 1 hour session doesn't count as a session, it needs to be at least 4 hours, then that's fine by me. But I'm not gonna give that as an example in my book. Like, I'm not gonna go over every different little homebrew that might come up. So I'll just be like, every session you get this, and whatever you decide is a session, that's up to you.
I would just put in whatever system you think makes sense for your game, and just realize that other groups are going to just do whatever the hell they want anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So do what you intended, and if someone wants to house rule it or whatever, then okay, they're going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't, like I said, I've been working on a game of my own, and I haven't written down an XP rule yet because I'm really not sure where I want to go with it yet. I mean, I figure I'll probably just end up going with the standard, class case by case thing with bonuses for certain things. But
Yeah, but is that the one that you want to use? Is that the one that makes sense to you?
I don't know. See, because I at the beginning of my document, I had 3 rules, right? That kind of govern the game. But I added a 4th one today, and the 4th rule is the game favors risks versus rewards. And in it, I wrote, I said, your character could have stayed home on a farm, gone into a safe trade in the city, or otherwise lived a quiet, mostly safe life of simple peace, eventually succumbing to some natural disease or old age. But instead, they choose to sharpen their skills and talents in a dangerous profession and go out to seek their fortune in combat and riches. So, with this in mind, your character is constantly balancing risks versus rewards, and the mechanics of the game attempt to simulate that. Getting down to the bottom part of it, which is, keep the spirit in mind when you're playing and always have an idea or a goal in mind. It's not up to a games master to provide you with something to do. It's up to you to want to do something that entails a risk and promises a reward. And with that in mind, I think if I was going to have some kind of an XP-based system for my game, it would be the more risks that you take as a character, good or bad, stupid or not stupid, that would entail more XP. Like, frequently you end up with the super duper cautious player syndrome, which is he's the guy who's not going to jump in the green devil's mouth, or the guy who's not going to pull the lever for the trap or walk into the room that's. But I mean, if you start awarding XP for doing stupid stuff like that, as well as, all their successes, it's kind of, I think it's almost a better system just because it's kind of like, hey, I want to encourage you to do stuff, whether it's pass or fail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it makes sense to me why a player or a character wouldn't just run into a room without knowing what's inside of it. I understand why a player would be super cautious, because if you're role-playing the character, your life is on the line. You don't necessarily want to do something stupid. But in your game, hey, if you do something risky, you're kind of gambling. And that sounds interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. I'm working on building more mechanics into the game that make it more risk versus reward, because that is my favorite style of play. I want people to do stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want it to take.
What about non-class and level systems, though? I mean, like Call of Cthulhu has skill-based progression, where at the end of a session, all the skills you've ticked, you get to roll to see if you improve them. So that kind of frees you from that class level thing, and it's more contingent about what you actually do in the game. Of course, you do get everyone trying to use every skill possible, which is a bit like playing Skyrim, where you spend half the game just jumping around in fields of flowers, picking them just to get your herbalism and agility up.
Yeah.
or stealthing everywhere. Everywhere, or just spamming conjuration. I actually had an idea for that in my game when I was thinking how to do skills, but I couldn't. I didn't want to add a lot of bookkeeping. I didn't want to do the roll it once, then you tag it, you flag it. Hold on, I got a daughter here bugging me one second.
Aww.
She's deaf, so she's pulling on me, trying to sign. So I'll be right back in a second. Sorry.
Noise.
Aww. I've never heard that. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, to answer your question though, Grim, I am kind of working on the skills now, and that is something I do want to do. I like that from when I played all the Chaosium games like Pendragon and Call of Cthulhu and Elf Quest and of course Rune Quest. I like the fact that if you use the skill, you have a chance to improve at it. So I do want to add a percentage-based skill system. It's a little hard to kind of reconcile it with D20s, though. You know what I mean?
Wow. Each bonus is 5%. So
yeah.
The other
What are they-
example I was going to... Sorry, go ahead.
Huh? Oh no, I didn't know what I missed.
Oh, nothing much.
Oh. I was just saying that I am also building a skill system in there that does reward using skills, because I like that idea too, and that's part of the whole risk versus reward thing. Is
Yeah.
using this skill may get you a point in it, may not.
I'm curious what you're going to come up with, because that kind of system it makes sense to me, but I would want to avoid a bunch of bookkeeping. Like, I was trying to figure out how to let characters advance skills more organically without just, okay, level up, put points in skills that you may not have even used.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, well, what if I put a thing where you got to train it? You got to train it every time you level up, and that takes days or weeks, depending on whatever the hell I was thinking and how I wanted to make it work. And then eventually I was like, no, this seems like it's way too much work. The other idea I've had for a game was kind of what Grimace, like with the skill thing, but like doing it where when you perform actions, you gain experience on different kind of archetype tracks. Like if you kill monsters, that's like fighter XP. If you cast spells, that's wizard XP. When you level those tracks up, then you get a new fighter or wizard related thing.
That's kind of cool too. I mean, the thing I don't like, the weakness of leveling systems, in my opinion, is the whole you get stuff, but you may get stuff that you didn't actually work on, and that was always what I hated about 3.0, 3.5, and Pathfinder, was the fact that you had characters who could basically start the game, and they had so many pluses to begin with that it was just like, why roll a dice at all? It just becomes meaningless. I'll give you an example. Let's say you play the min-max game, like most of my friends do, because I play with power gamers, I'm not going to lie. So let's say you got you took your 18 and you put it on your dex, and then you picked an elf, so you got another +2 on your dex, bringing it up to 20. Well, that's a +5 modifier. And then let's say, you pick up a feat that gives you another +2, and then you pick up a racial trait that you can change out, giving you another +2. So you're already up to a +9 on a skill check. And then on top of that, if it's a class skill, you get another point. So now you're up to +10. And then, of course, you get the virtual 3. Now you're up to +13. And some of that stuff synergizes, so you can get like another +2. So you can get all the way up to like a +15 on a skill check.
Bards could start the game with a astronomically high diplomacy roll.
Yeah. I mean,
part of that is you cut out those feats or those abilities that give you like +2s here and there, and then you cut out the synergy bonus thing. So you could have a system that operates in that without allowing players to min-max ridiculously high bonuses.
Yeah. Some of that's on the games master though, to punish characters who hyper specialize by putting them in situations.
But here's the inherent
help.
Well, the inherent problem though is that it doesn't matter if you cut those feats out, if you cut those things out at all. It's just by the time you hit level 5, you're already getting a +8 if it's a class skill, just without anything else. And even if you past a certain point, it's impossible to stop the high skill checks. You're gonna get a 20 no matter what you roll, or over a 20 no matter what you roll.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's like your chance of failure is pretty much, the character has to roll a 1.
Yeah. Do you find that to be as much of a problem in old school games as 5e, or?
Well, having not played that much 5e, I don't know. I can't say for 5e.
I'm personally fine with a character at a certain point having so much skill in a specific skill set or whatever that they can rarely, if ever, fail. That to me fits like the whole action movie thing where you've got like you hire the expert hacker who like can hack the Pentagon in like 20 seconds. But that expert hacker, he'll be pretty useless when they kidnap him and they drop him off in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, and like a special forces team with hunting dogs like chases him through the woods. Like that hacker has like no survival skills, so that's why you test him. So that's like what Grim was saying earlier.
Hey, diversity. It's good to see you, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Track of every successful use with tick marks, and after a certain number, they go. Yeah, that's kind of how they do it with the Chaosium stuff, and that's kind of how I had it in mind to do it as well, because it just kind of makes sense. It's like if you're constantly using a skill, you're gonna get better at it. You may not get like exponentially better at it, but
my concern would be just having someone try to spam a skill check, like let's say you had search. Search was a skill. So you have a player I'm going to search this wall. Now I'm going to search that wall. Now I'm going to search the floor. Now I'm going to search the ceiling.
So in Call of Cthulhu, you only get the tick once.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how many times you do it. So that's one way.
Yeah, that's the cutoff point.
Once per session.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's a good cutoff point too, because it keeps people from spamming it, because you can't do it if you can only get one check for it.
So what does Greg think? He's joined and he hasn't said anything.
Yeah, Greg, you haven't said anything.
I kind of like the video gaming style of Morrowind or Skyrim, where it's easier to increase the skills that you already know, but harder to learn a new one. So I was thinking about doing what T-Shirt was going to do for my Kaiju game, where the more times you use a skill, the greater your chances of improving, or that's how you improve it perhaps. But I was thinking, no, I think for a hardcore like sci-fi action game, it's more fun for the players to just be able to use their points however they want and not have to keep track of that. So I think what I'm going to do is, you get a number of skill points as experience, for example, when you quote unquote level up, although I don't think I'm going to have levels. And if you want to learn a new skill that you don't already have expertise in, it's going to cost more points. If you want to increase one that you're already skilled in, it's going to cost fewer points. A simple system like that.
Now, something I'd already decided on at the beginning when I was creating my game was that people would get XP, and what you would do with your XP would be you would spend it, or you'd be able to spend it in order to raise your stats and or possibly your skills. Thereby actually getting experience points a tangible thing that has value to your character. So now it's not just for leveling. If your character starts out with like a 3 con and you somehow manage to survive your first adventure, it's like, okay, well, now I've got enough experience, I can raise my con a point or two and maybe survive a little bit longer.
Yeah, you could go very crunchy and have like tables for it all, but like give like each stat and skill like its own like almost like leveling table. It's like if you want to like raise your small arm skill, it costs like 1,000 XP or whatever.
Didn't they do something like that in Big Eye Small Mouth, where according to the genre you were playing, the most useful skills were more expensive?
I believe so. Yeah. That's twice stats BSM. Yeah.
Well, my formula was a lot simpler than that. It's basically the stat that you're currently at and times a certain amount of XP times 100. So
I also believe in.
Yeah.
Also good.
So the higher it is, the more it will cost you. But of course, if you're spending XP to raise stuff, that's XP you're not putting towards leveling. Mm-hmm. So it's risk versus reward. It's like, how bad do you need that level versus how bad do you need that stat?
Mm-hmm. I also believe in BASM. You could like specialize in a skill, so it would be cheaper. So you could like, you have the science skill, and it's like, I'm going to take a point in biology. So that gives you that +1 where you use biology specifically, but not with anything all the scientific. But it was like cheaper to do.
Yeah, Muppet, you got it right. Yeah, XP is character development currency. Yeah, exactly.
The way Deadlands used to do it. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
So the way Deadlands used to do it, I've often talked about this in terms of its merits and flaws on characters and how it takes the strain off the games master remembering everyone's flaws. You got chips whenever one of your character's flaws came up, like you remind the games master, we just ate this, but my character's allergic to shellfish. Oh, okay. You get some chips and you get the bad consequences of that. But you could spend the chips during the game for bonuses or save them up towards experience. So that created a tension, but it encouraged people to roleplay their characters, their backgrounds, their characters' problems, and so on, in a way that no other system ever has, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that's fun.
I like that.
I had to walk away for a bit. I cut the last bit of a T-shirt talking about your advancement idea, and that made me think for my fighter, wizard, thief XP tracks was that instead of leveling up the class, if you have fighter XP, you spend it to up fighter-based things instead. That's something to think about.
Yeah, but it really seems like a lot of stuff to track, because then it becomes like a case of, well, did I get fighter XP, or did I get magic XP, or did I get thief XP?
Well, you would track, you would record it every time you got it. Like every time you did something, you just do it right away. So the DM wouldn't have to remember for 5 different people. Okay, well, you did this many fighter things, whatever. Because sometimes, I've heard of GMs having a hard time remembering what players did individually. So having to do different archetype tracks would be exponentially harder.
Yeah. It is interesting, though. And I mean, it's not a bad idea either.
Well, it comes down to the bookkeeping thing. Do you really want to deal with all that crap?
I don't know. I mean, I'm coming from a 3.0 background, 3.5 background, Pathfinder first edition background, so crunchy systems are fine with me. I'm used to them.
Yeah, I'm used to them as well, but I know some people, they don't want to deal with that kind of complexity.
Yeah, conversely, my favorite game is Torg, which is D20 for everything. So, I don't know. Muppet asks, any good organized play XP systems I like? The only organized play I've actually ever played was Pathfinder organized play, and the way you leveled up in that was every time you successfully completed a session of a Pathfinder module, whatever you want to call them, adventure, you got 1 XP. And when you got 3 XP, you could level up. I think is how it worked, or maybe it was 5. I don't remember. But I think the kicker was your characters could never advance beyond 3rd level. So it was kind of like, wow. And I'm not kidding. Your characters could never advance beyond 3rd level. So
there's that progression system. I think it's in that board game Red Dragon Inn. I can't remember where. You actually get more XP or skill points early on. So if you're level 1, and you go from level 1 to 2, you get 3, which is huge. But you actually, it slows down as you increase. So first session you might get 3, next session you might get 2. Then you skip a session, you get 2. Then you skip a session, you get 1. I don't know about that, but it makes sense because early on you want to have more of a power increase, and then later on it slows down a little bit as you're focused more on gear and gold and that type of thing.
Well, you also learn the most good stuff in the beginning. Yeah,
I was going to say that's where I would just say the experience points, they become, you need more and more and more and more, so you level up slower, and that would kind of resolve that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed that that is something about Castles and Crusades, is characters are fairly front-loaded in Castles and Crusades. They have a lot of good stuff right at the very beginning, and not so much going up in progression. Have a lot of dead levels in some of those classes. And I think they kind of try to eliminate a lot of dead levels, but like the monk in Castles and Crusades has the least amount of dead levels for the entire group of classes. It's like you're going to get something every single level, and it's fun that way. But I don't know. Is that? I mean, if that's really so much an XP thing as just a character development thing,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I prefer to not be front loaded because then it's faster to make a character, and then you can get stuff. You don't have to pile on so many things so quickly. If you level up, kind of offset it. So.
The abilities in Castles and Crusades, it's not like they're very crunchy though. It's not like you have to like add a lot to your character sheet. It's just you copy the text block of like a specific thing you can do, like as that class, and that's it. You're not like tweaking for the most part. You're not tweaking your stats and all that stuff based on those abilities. If that makes sense. What I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah,
it's like you're a barbarian. It's like, oh, you're better at scavenging, so you just note that I'm better at scavenging, and yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's not so
it
bad.
says 3 XP for level in Pathfinder Society play. Yeah, that's right. Level cap used to be 10. When I played, it was 3. I mean, literally, it was kind of like at third level, you retire your character. But by that point, you had 9 sessions. So.
Oh, is that all?
Uh-huh.
I know. Oh, wow, 9, that's a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, most Palladium classes are front load. Yeah, Palladium, it takes forever to make a character, and it's just.
I remember that from when I used to play Rifts. Like, oh no, I gotta make a character, and I got a million things to note down. I never liked that. Like, when you level up, you gain 26 hit points. Wow. Okay, I don't really give a shit then. And maybe that was the point, to not really care about leveling up so much. But I never liked that.
Yeah, in my game, you get a new ability at level 2, then at 4, and then at 6, and then at 8, and then at 10. And it's pretty much the same for every class. So it's just nice and even.
In my game, you get a thing pretty much every level.
Well, this is like special class abilities. Like you still get like, every level you get like a +1 to something or whatever. But these are like class specific stuff.
Yeah, my game, you get to pick everyone gets a talent every level.
Yeah.
And you can kind of pick how you want your character to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got to scoot. If there's time, I'll come back. But
Okay, Grim.
Later,
See you in a bit.
Later.
Okay, Greg, I'm curious. Since your game is like 5th edition based, what do you normally do? Do you do Milestone or XP or?
Oh, you mean like when we play D&D?
Ares.
Yeah. So no, I just do it by the book. Core 5th edition rules. XP for monster kills. That's how we do it.
Okay, it's pretty standard then.
Yep.
No session stuff, no role playing stuff.
I might give a bonus for an exceptionally unique thing that a player did, but I usually use inspiration points for that. I stick it kind of by the book. So no session, no milestone. We grew up in 2nd edition, so we're like, we didn't do treasure for XP or gold for XP. We did kill monsters for XP. Basically, is the only thing I've ever done.
Sadly, that doesn't always work in 5e, especially if you're running modules, because a lot of the modules are more based on story and finding out mysteries and stuff. So it's like you might have like one encounter with like a couple of wolves, like in that whole session, and it's like, oh, here's like 10 XP, everyone. You're level 8. Yeah, have fun. But so a lot of it is milestones. Like I'm running Curse of Strahd, and that's pretty much all milestones. That's like, you find the Sunblade, which you need to kill Strahd. Okay, here's a level.
Yeah. Doom That Came to Astris module that I wrote, where basically part of the story or the plot is you having to find these fragments of this legendary axe. I wrote in a rule for getting XP for that. So it's almost like XP for treasure. So like you get, every time you find a fragment of this axe, you get 5% of your accumulated XP thus far. So, a 7th level PC would get a huge chunk of XP just for finding that artifact. And everyone gets that. So like it kind of incentivizes the players to want to continue looking for those pieces.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know.
I guess finding specific treasure, like noteworthy stuff, I wouldn't mind giving experience points for, but not like, oh, you found gold, here's gold, here's XP for gold. As much as I don't like Dungeon World, they did do a thing where at the end of a session, if you you got very few experience points per session, and you need very few to level up. So it was like one if you found like a noteworthy treasure, one if you made like a noteworthy discovery, and one if you confronted a noteworthy threat. And I kind of like that idea for like the discovery and treasure thing, but I wouldn't just do it for all the gold for it.
Well, the way they balance that in old school D&D is by making it really hard to get the gold out of the dungeon because, encumbrance and stuff. They were, you were supposed to be very strict with encumbrance. So it's like, yeah, you find 2,000 gold pieces. Now have fun trying to bring that back to town without dying. So,
yeah, sure, but
Yeah.
this idea like your fighter gets better at fighting because you dragged a chest of gold out of a dungeon. Doesn't make any sense.
It's supposed to represent like.
I know what it's supposed to represent, like the challenge to get to it or whatever,
the accomplishment.
But
that's also why
kill the monster, and that's like the treasure should be its own reward to me.
Well, that's why they also put in the rules in the rules cyclopedia for like the training and stuff. So you were supposed to spend that gold on finding a trainer to like raise your sword fighting skill, or like
I hate that too.
Yeah,
I hate that.
No, I don't mind
it because. I hate it because I'm a fighter. I went into a dungeon. I killed a horde of orcs. Now I got to go back to town and have a guy teach me how to use a sword, even though I just was risking life and limb in a dungeon, which you would think would make you a better fighter, but apparently not.
Well, there's a difference between swinging your sword around and getting lucky and killing some orcs, and you just do it by pure physical skill. There's a difference between that and like learning actual techniques that have been developed over hundreds of years in like a sword style. Like, if I'm good at street fighting, doesn't mean I'm good at like MMA. Like I might still want to go to an MMA gym and like learn how to do grappling and stuff, even though I'm beating people up in the street like left and right.
I would assume that you would have learned those fighting techniques before you decided to go beat people on the street. That's the difference. Like if you just go fight someone in the street, I wouldn't say that you're an MMA fighter, or like you're like if I get a sword to go around swinging around, I'm not a fighter. I would imagine I have to learn how to use it, which is reflected by the fighter's attack bonus, the THAC0 progression, the hit points. So why the hell did I go to a dungeon kill? And it's not lucky swings. I didn't, my character was so lucky I killed a whole bunch of orcs. I just lucked out on that. No. Then I got to come back and say, hey guy, you're going to teach me some fighting techniques, which I need to do to level up, even though I just massacred a bunch of monsters.
I don't mind it because you could make the same argument for a wizard. Like, so a wizard should be able to. Well, a wizard should be able to be better at magic and better understand magic just because he knows how to throw fireball into a crowd of orcs. No, he should go to a wizard school, and there's a specific wizard who's like, "Hey, now we're going to teach you lightning bolt."
Before he became an adventurer.
Not in old school D&D. In old school D&D, the assumption is you're a farm boy who picked up his dad's sword, who was like a guardsman once, and now you're going out and risking life or limb to maybe become,
So the wizard was a farmer who found a spell book and learned how to cast like a magic missile before. That doesn't make any sense either.
Okay, well, here's the thing, and I mean, this is kind of an area where I'm a little bit knowledgeable. There's an MMA fighter by the name of Bob Sapp. Mm-hmm. He's 6'5". He's like 300 and something pounds. I mean, he's a monster.
Yeah.
His background is he was a football player.
Yeah.
And after he, stopped doing football for injuries or whatever like that, he eventually got hooked up into the pro wrestling scene. Well, he didn't last very long in pro wrestling. He had a little bit of training from that. Eventually he got roped into doing MMA. Well, in MMA, he didn't really have a style. He would just run at his opponent as fast as he could and just beat the shit out of him. But that worked. It worked a lot. In fact, just using that very rudimentary style, he managed to beat one of the best kickboxers in the world at the time, Ernesto Host. And he did it twice.
But it was also, I remember watching him fight. There was also a time where he would constantly get gassed after like 30 seconds because he wasn't trained in like that particular.
I'm getting there, Victor. Yeah. I'm getting there. Okay. So, right. That's basically what he started out with. And that worked for him for a while. But at one point, he actually had to start training with other stuff. He actually learned how to do ground grappling and other stuff, and he was actually more impressive when he showed off that he could do arm bars and takedowns and things like that. And he did get his ass kicked eventually by Mirko Krokop, who basically broke his orbital bone after catching him the right way. So a superior fighter with strategy managed to take him down, so Bob Sapp had to go back and kind of retrain a little bit in order to keep fighting. Now, I mean, Bob Sapp's career kind of went to hell after that. I mean, he became a tomato can because he didn't want to risk his life so much over a $40,000 payday.
Yeah. I don't blame him.
Right. But the point is, even in MMA, you see fighters all the time who go in with one style and they get their asses kicked, and then they start picking up other stuff in order to survive in that. You know, I've seen lots of fighters who went in there as punchers who started picking up Brazilian jiu-jitsu and stuff like that in order to be able to take down these other guys.
But have you ever played Kingdom Come Deliverance, that medieval Poland game? Yeah, you train with some dude at the beginning. You have some rudimentary skill. Maybe if you're lucky, you can like kill some bandits. And even then, like those bandits are doing like some crazy moves and disarming you and shit. But then, you know, you're supposed to like go find all these trainers and learn new maneuvers. Like, oh, now I can disarm them. Now I can like do this. Now I know how to fight 2 or 3 opponents at once. You start fighting in tournaments. You like learn more and more. And meanwhile, you're still doing quests. You're still fighting dudes. You're still fighting bandits. But like just using that one skill that you perfected to kill a bandit doesn't mean that all of a sudden, like after you kill that bandit, you know this 100-year-old disarming technique that some master developed. No, you have to find somebody to teach you that.
And no one's saying that just because the fighter goes and kills a bandit, he now knows a 100-year-old technique. No one's making that argument.
Well, you don't have to be shitty about it. I'm just.
I'm not being shitty about it. I mean, you're saying like you're making this weird analogy, and I'm saying no one made that argument. You
kind of made that argument. You kind of like your argument was, why should I find a trainer while my character just killed 20 orcs? Because he might want to learn new techniques.
Job. Well, sure, he might want to learn new techniques, but I'm not saying that.
I was referencing
level 2.
I was referencing the Rules Cyclopedia, which literally teaches you new techniques. And you were arguing with me that you don't like that. So if you don't know what's in the Rules Cyclopedia, don't fucking argue with me.
My argument is I do own the Rules Cyclopedia.
Okay, sorry I'm getting mad, but this tone is kind of shitty, like you have to admit. So
my argument was paying a trainer to level up.
Yeah. I can understand that.
That's not, but that wasn't what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about.
That's what I was talking about. And then
I was referencing the Rules Cyclopedia, and then you were like, "Well, I don't like that." But it's not about leveling up. It's about learning new. It's learning how to be a better fighter. It gives you like certain bonuses to your attacks.
Guys, unfortunately I am still at work. I was able to pop on for like 30 minutes. I appreciate it, but I am going to have to go back to work now.
Okay, Greg. Thanks for hanging out with us, man.
Thanks a lot, dude.
Yeah. Let's
so it looks like it was just we just had a miscommunication. That's fine. But I was referencing the Rules Cyclopedia, and you said you don't like that. So I was trying to explain how it works in the Rules Cyclopedia. So yeah.
No. I mean, regardless, it's like, okay, I'm an actual trained martial artist. You know, I do actually know how to pick up a sword and kill you with it. Now my level of expertise with it is not, say, to the grandmaster who taught me. I'm nowhere near his skill level. It's quite simply because I haven't had as much time to train with it, and I don't know everything that he knows. But I mean, like, can I take my katana right now and go beat like an average guy on the street if you handed him a sword? Yeah. 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna win.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that because I'm arrogant. It's just the truth.
Yeah, and then you run into Ogami Ito, Lone Wolf and Cub, and he does some crazy shit, and you're just laying there bleeding out. And then you manage to survive, and then you find some guy who is like, hey, teach me some shit so I can take on Ogami Ito.
Yeah, and it's almost kind of tropey. It's almost kind of tropey because how many times have you watched a movie where dude is a good fighter, gets his ass kicked, and then trainer pulls him aside and says, "You got your ass kicked because you didn't know his style. You didn't know how to fight him. Now I'm going to show you." And then the guy comes back and whoops his ass. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Rocky made that super popular. And so did Van Damme to an extent. So I don't know. I mean, I can kind of understand it. Instead of maybe so much paying a trainer, you could always kind of make it more of a role playing kind of thing where, like
you're
a
free to do
guy.
that.
Yeah. That would actually be more fun than just paying a trainer in town.
You could even make it a whole couple sessions just by itself. You could do some the 36 chamber like training montage stuff. Like that'd be cool. And then all of a
that would
sudden
be
you
cool.
get out and use a new style of kung fu, which is good against a specific type of enemy or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a weird distinction. It's like 3rd edition D&D. They kind of established that the fighter has already, honed all of his skills, and at 18 years old, he's ready to go out there and whoop ass, which is kind of like what your entry level knights were, because people seem to forget that, like, the medieval knights of Europe, they were young guys. They were about like 18, 17, 16-year-olds who, were trained to kill people.
I disagree on the 3rd edition. You're already fully trained, whatever, because a level 1, you've only got a +1 to hit, and you have a full 20 level spectrum to go, and you have all these feats, improved trip, and whatever that you can also learn. So that tells you that's more of an entry level fighter. Like you've got the basics down. You got +1 to hit.
Well,
Yeah,
And
3rd
the
edition
keys
kind
really
of.
grow.
3rd to 5th edition kind of assumes that you're already like some sort of like at least a minor hero or whatever. You're not just like the farm boy right off the farm who just decided to pick up his hand sword. Yeah,
I wouldn't even see in 2nd edition. I wouldn't even say that either, because in 2nd edition you're not a 1d4 hit point commoner with +0 to hit. You have I think you have a THACO of 20, but it goes up pretty quickly, which tells me you're more experienced with your hit points and your armor proficiencies than the typical commoner is. And you can also learn, I can't remember if weapon specialization was a 1st level thing that you could do or not, but that tells me that you're not just a farmer that picked up a sword. You have some training, you have some expertise, you have something that sets you above the D4, D6 hit point guy that is gonna die like in 1 hit. You'll die in I guess 2 hits.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason they called 2nd edition the 5th edition of the 90s or whatever. But yeah, no, I gotcha.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm not just saying it. I mean, 3rd edition. I mean, I think that's actually how they describe fighters, is that that's pretty much one of the reasons why their skills were ass, because they have spent their entire life. I mean, I guess from womb to the point that they're 18 years old, just learning how to fight. So I don't know. Certainly, if I'd spent, from, I don't know, 10 years old to 18, I'd probably be a hell of a fighter, because that's 8 years of training. So,
well, going off 3rd edition mechanics, if I were to do like a knight, I wouldn't see the knights. I would give them 2 or 3 levels, not just 1. For the differentiate the fact that like the knight's like more elite, he's better trained, he's got probably more combat experience or whatever. But I wouldn't just go, okay, level 1 fighter's a knight, because that just seems way too of a low benchmark. Especially because if you consider like compare a knight, like level 1 fighter's got +1 to hit, plus strength for some reason. Compared to like a commoner, he's only got a 5% difference in accuracy.
I agree with you, but at the same time, you have level 1 samurai, and in order to attain the title of samurai, that's the same equivalent as a knight. You also have level 1. What was the mounted hero guy? The cavalier, which is also a knight class.
That's just like samurai. Well, samurais. Well, I would largely just you can just say it's a fighter reflavor. I know they got to put
it's more flavor than I think. I don't think you're supposed to take it literally.
But that's where I go, like, okay, that's where they kind of they shouldn't have done that in the first place. They shouldn't have said, okay, you're a samurai and you're basically, you compare yourself to a peasant, a farmer, and you're just slightly better at hitting things than he is. That doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't even go with that. And I know it's like official, whatever, but that's, to me, I'm not going to go, okay, well,
I think everyone's always done
Warriors
that.
level 1.
Yeah, and Rogue Scholar has a point too. It's like, that's why the prestige classes were better. And 3.0 and 3.5 were geared towards prestige classes. So you could say that is the actual knight level.
you could also do with like the name level thing, where like in second edition or Rule Cyclopedia, where like you get different titles as you level up. So
I like
Samurai could
those.
be like a high level. I like them in theory as well, but I don't like the fact that I'd have to cook up like 10, 15, 20 different titles, like slightly different words or thing. Like a wizard becomes, I think, a warlock at some point.
Well, I
get
mean,
that it's
that's
supposed to.
they didn't always. Some of those didn't have any titles until you hit a certain level. Like
Ninth,
I
I think
think
was.
I don't think you got anything for Druid until you hit like I want to say like 5th or 6th level. I don't know. I have to go back and look, but
I
Some of
think
them don't
always
have the titles.
I think everyone has always kind of done that, like scale the level to the character concept. Like if I'm running a modern game and people are supposed to be Jason Bourne, I'm not starting them at level 1. They're probably going to be like at least level 6 or something. And same with fantasy. If everyone's like supposed to be a Witcher, they're not going to be level 1. They're going to be like level 6 to 8 because Witchers have some crazy training. So, yeah.
No, there's no level 1 Navy SEAL.
Yeah, pretty much. So
Unless you were playing a 3rd edition type game, then they probably would have a Navy SEAL at level 1.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
so.
that would be like the Wookiee Navy SEAL that just came out of Hell Week and just got attached to the teams. And then his NCO guy is like the level 6 Navy SEAL.
Well, if you're doing D20 Modern for that, you'd say like 3rd level would be like the advanced class that starts in some kind of Navy SEAlish thing. Then level, I think 5 or whenever D20 Modern, because I know they had advanced classes and I thought they had prestige classes too. I don't remember though. I just remember that at level 3 you could like split your character into something different.
Yeah, Fladius, are all D&D classes equal?
No.
Definitely not.
Balance is
but
hard.
if you're doing the same track, you should try to keep them more or less equal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the theory, and that's kind of what they try to do. But, I mean, anybody who's DM'd a high-level game knows that it's just, you get a 10th level mage up against a 10th level fighter, and if the mage has had any time to prepare, the fighter doesn't stand a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So
balance is hard. You can try to minimize it and you can do the best you can, but at some point somebody's always going to find a way to break the game and use a class in a way that you're not expecting, and you're like OP. So all you can do is minimize it.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Muppet. Yeah, I like the idea of certain titles and certain classes having access to only certain things. I mean, like that was cool. I used to like the old Grandmaster of Flower things. I never actually saw anybody who legit earned the title by playing through it, because before you attain the title of Grandmaster of Flowers, you have to beat like the 4 Masters of the Winds or whatever. There's only like 4 Masters of Dragons or 4 Masters of Winds, and you got to beat all of them before you can beat Grandmasters of Flowers. So, and I never saw anybody do that either. And the Great Druid, you could only have one Great Druid. So,
what about the just kind of good Druid?
Yeah, well, and that plays into another trope. There are martial arts systems where I forget the term just because I'm sick and I'm feeling brain dead today. But it's a direct transmission style like the one I learned, where a grandmaster will only pass the title to one chosen disciple, one chosen student will carry that title of grandmaster, and that will be like the only one. And in some cases, there are styles that teach only one student, and that's it, and they become the sole heir of that style. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you that whole that old kung fu movie feel with the guy with the wispy beard, like by my or like drunken master type shit,
My brother mentioned a game where you start off multi-class. Forget which one, but like the idea is most people are more than one profession. Yeah. Okay. There's a few games that do that and do it well. Worlds Without Number is my favorite because depending on what stuff you plug in, it can make your character play differently. I'm doing something similar for mine with professions as far as the backgrounds go. So, like if you have a character who's a martial character, but they started off as a street thief or a pickpocket, then they're going to have some thieving abilities. I mean, are they going to be as good as an actual thief class? No.
Well, at the end of the day, like the games we play, it's all dice and text. It's just a facsimile of real life. So
True.
you can't get everything perfect, and sometimes you just gotta like what's the word?
You're on the side of convenience.
Yes.
But also kind of like switch off your brain and just ignore the plot hole or whatever, and just go with it.
Yeah. At a certain level,
there's
your
a
game
term for it,
breaks
but I can't
down.
remember it. Yeah.
That's like I don't want to do like a game where there's like hit locations and wound tracking, and your arm is your right arm is -1 to this, and your left leg is negative whatever. And I know you don't have to get that granular with it, but honestly, I don't want to. I played 4th edition for a while, and the wolves have like 24 hit points or some stupid amount, and that made it take forever, and it wasn't really enjoyable. And I don't really want to, as a DM also, because I thought about this too, like, what if I did added in a wound mechanic where like if you get injured, you're penalized. And I thought, well, if you're fighting 10 goblins and I got to track which goblin has negative whatever to whatever.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's going to drive the game down. Do I want to deal with that? Especially because the goblin's probably going to die in 1 or 2 hits anyway. Is that really worthwhile? So my whole attitude is, get it as close as you can without bogging the game down in all this minutia.
Yeah, which that's the 5th edition's problem, and that's why fights take like 4 hours.
Yeah, that's also one of the reasons why
5th edition too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
5th edition combat is hella long.
Yeah,
Why?
but that's
Did they do like the 40 hit point kobolds?
Just they give monsters a lot of hit dice. The action economy is just kind of crap for monsters. So like even when you have like one big bad, to make them survive, you have to surround them by like 20 minions. So else like the team, the party is just going to surround them and just beat them to death with swords in like 2 rounds.
Or they have to get legendary actions.
Yeah, and even those don't always work. So yeah.
That's honestly that's why I really like Crawford's Scarlet Heroes mechanic where he puts it against hit dice. I don't know if I'd necessarily use it for my game. I think my solution is just keep the hit points low for everybody.
Yeah,
but
thought about doing that too, like throttling hit points. I thought about just doing a wound level type thing just for everyone, because there's a guy that likes our dice pool game, and he likes that. Like, I think a fighter starts with 5 wounds, and then I think at level 10 you'll have like 9. And he really liked how everything scaled very slowly. So I thought about doing that.
Yeah. Now, what's funny is my other players at my table, who are also GMs, they actually hate the idea of having low hit points when you're at higher levels, because their whole thing is, well, I'm a hero, I shouldn't be taken out in 1 hit.
Well, that's when you put in a mechanic where it's easy for your guy to avoid the attack or whatever, and you go with that. Yeah. But my problem is then I got to readjust, like Fireball, it can't do that much damage unless I want the player to die in 1 hit. And then healing magic, I have to restructure how healing magic works, because if you have fewer hit points, it should probably heal less. And then it sounds like a whole bunch of work.
The problem is that they're kind of right, because if you look at the original way hit points were supposed to work, they weren't just like your health; they were like your luck, your stamina, there were all sorts of stuff like mixed into one. So it wasn't just like how hardy and healthy you are. Like it's also like how good are you at dodging these attacks? How good are you at not getting winded. How lucky are you? So that's kind of what was supposed to represent having higher hit points at higher levels, because you were just better at all that stuff. But that that concept kind of got lost through the ages, I think, and everyone just started thinking as hit points of hit points as health, pure health.
And I know I'm not gonna. I don't want to start an argument, a fight. I'm just gonna. But my thing is, I've heard all that stuff, but then the counter is, why do you cure whatever wound spells fully heal your hit points? If it's luck, plot armor, fatigue, how does that make sense then?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not saying that I fully agree. I'm just saying that's what Gygax originally meant, and who knows how he fought. So
he should have then differentiated
Yeah.
them the
Yeah.
different way,
Mhm.
or not really had healing magic in the game at all. Then then I
Yeah.
would also say then hit points should also recover more quickly.
Yeah.
Because I know in older editions it was like 1 hit point per day, and if you rest, it's weird because third edition I think was 1 per day, but if you rested for like the full day, it was like based off level, it was 3 points. The second and third edition had really slow amounts, but if it's just like, oh, it's combat skill and stuff, why does it take so long? And I wish Gygax would have thought about that a little more and
Well,
Yeah,
really.
it's definitely not a perfect system, and that's why it got modeled really quickly.
one of the things that was part of those old adventures, though, was the fact that he fully expected you to get your ass kicked bad enough to where you had to retreat from a dungeon and go back to town and lick your wounds a little bit, which is usually why most dungeons were located near towns.
Yeah.
And that's something that's gotten lost in translation over the ages.
Well, did he state that in because I grew up on second edition D&D and I'd read Rule Cycle, but we never played that one. No, I grew up on the whatever the hell the easy to master game that came in a black box. That's what the first time I actually played, and then I quickly went to second edition. And I don't remember anything in the book stating that. Not to say that you guys are wrong. But if he didn't spell it out in the books, that could be why I got lost in translation. Like that should be if he had like a little sidebar saying, "Hey, here's how you're intended to play the game," so people kind of knew what to do.
Well, keep in mind,
I'm pretty sure the hit point explanation was in the book, but I don't remember like, oh, the intention is players go in a dungeon, get into a fight, get their asses beat back to town. That would have been nice to have that in the book.
Well, keep in mind, Gygax only really wrote the DM's guide and stuff like that. Other stuff like Beck Me and BX and Holmes were all written by other guys who were kind of working on Gygax's work.
Then he should have told them put that in the damn book so player, because that's I know people talk about how to play different games, like the object, the expected flow of play. If you design a game and you're like, this is how it's supposed to be, because I know people complain about that in third edition. Oh, I go into a dungeon, I fight some rats, I go to a town, I got to rest up for a week, like I got to have a cleric or whatever. And if that's the way the game is supposed to operate, that should be spelled out in the book. So players are like, oh, okay, so we're not screwing up, we're not playing it wrong. That's actually what you're supposed to do.
Well, it made it worse when 5th edition came out with short rests, as Muppet says.
4th edition had short rests. 4th edition had I got beat to 1 hit point by getting an ogre club of me. I'll just burn some healing surges. I'm tip top shape. Let's go fight the next ogre.
Yeah, I remember
that. 9 of them at level 1.
Yeah, me and the basic X would have a joke about that. He calls 5th edition like a death by 1,000 cuts system, and then I was like, yeah, but the problem is you get to 999 cuts and then they take a rest and you get the beginning.
Yeah.
So
well, in 4th edition they made it because I know in 5th edition you have to burn hit dice and you don't have many. In 4th edition though, you could you could burn as many as you wanted to within 10 minutes, or it was 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah. So you could top yourself off really fast and then just keep going. Yeah. So that was more like the edition where everyone had like a halo shield.
Yeah. The burn hit dice only is for short rests in 5th edition, and a long rest is just like you heal to full. You get like, I think it's like your level worth back of hit dice if you've used any in the short rest previously. So what they do is
you get all your healing surges back, all your hit points back. It's as if nothing ever happened.
Yeah, 5th edition is pretty much like that. Maybe slightly more gritty, but not by much.
Yeah, I think they're taking out short rests for 6th edition, but who cares about that? We're not going to be playing that.
I wish they would just take out 6th edition.
Well, see, in my game, I did short rests where you can do 3 a day. The first one's 10 minutes, second's 30 minutes, third one takes an hour. It only restores vitality points, not your wound points. And after that, you're too exhausted, too beat up to really benefit anymore from just, kicking back for a little while.
And low fantasy gaming does something similar where you get you can have up to 3 short rests per day, but you have diminishing returns on how much you can heal because you have to roll willpower checks in order to get half your hit points back. Yeah. And it's a good idea too. And hey, Grim, you're back.
Yes, that was
actually, now that he's
relatively
back,
painless.
I need to bounce because it's lunchtime and my laptop battery is almost dead.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging with us, man.
Latest.
Yep.
And sorry about the arguments.
No, that's fine. If we're doing a thing on Saturday, I can probably be there for that lot longer without as many interruptions.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do it. Right. I don't know what we're talking about Saturday, but we'll find out.
Okay. Later.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, also sorry for snapping, but I thought this tone was kind of shitty, but I just chalk it up to a miscommunication. I just that he wasn't sure what I was talking about. I think so.
Yeah,
I missed drama.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we are, like a little bit of a spat there between me and David Guile, because yeah.
the thing is, I didn't get to tell David about what my idea was for the zero action thing. But Grim, you know what I'm talking about. What I'm on to. And that's kind of one of my ideas for that too. Is if you're keeping the hit points low to begin with, where players can get beat to shit even at higher levels, it's kind of like, yeah, more in combat healing and stuff like that kind of helps. And minimizing short rests is also good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of like that better than there's like, oh, look, there just happens to be all these potions of healing just laying around. Or, oh, look, I ate a whole wheel of cheese and got back 5 hit points,
Cheese is pretty good.
Yeah.
For advanced modernity, I'm probably gonna put in stuff like, oh, if you visit like your local clinic, you regain this many hit points per day. If you visit like like an actual proper like private clinic or whatever, you visit, you get this much back a day.
Oh, so, well, if that's the case, then I would have to put in, it's like you visit your local brothel and you get your hit points back.
Yeah, you get herpes.
Yeah, you have to roll for disease, but you get all your hit points back.
Space herpes.
Space herpes. I don't know. I guess that does kind of go along with character advancement. I mean, because I'm glad I titled it character advancement and not XP and all that, but because these are things that are intrinsic to character advancement. One of the things I prefer that I'm going to be doing is, and I've always thought this should be the case, is letting clerics have open spell books.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody talking once on that.
So what exactly do you mean by that, so I can respond properly?
Okay. You know how clerics? Okay, clerical magic and arcane magic is pretty much the same, as Grim and I have discussed. I mean, the only difference is, well, they both have slots, and you can only cast so many of them per day, and that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
The only difference is, the cleric can convert spells to healing and stuff like that. But my thought is, a mage by design would have to know certain things, and maybe he could only memorize certain spells every day. But a cleric, on the other hand, has no idea what kind of situation he's going to run into. Mm-hmm. So how is he going to know what to prep?
I kind of agree with you.
Yeah. So my thought is, clerics should have just an open spell book. They should be able to cast anything that a cleric can cast. In other words, your first level, and you should be able to cast every single spell in the cleric spell list. But with the caveat that certain spells are either not going to be effective at lower levels, or just really can't be done at first level. Like, in order for a first level to pull off a Raise Dead, that's going to require a lot longer time to cast.
Yeah.
And it may not be successful.
I would maybe put in something kind of like a divine inspiration kind of like number, where it's like, yeah, you have an open spell book, but you can still only cast so much a day by like appealing to your god or goddess or whatever. Like at a certain point he's gonna stop listening because you're only a level 1 cleric, and he's like, I'm fucking busy. I'm dealing with like this paladin over here is also in a fight. Like, go away.
But that takes away the sense of the god's omnipotence.
Yeah, but they're busy.
And
They've loads of stuff on the plate.
instead, my mechanic for that is going to be faith checks. So you'll check your faith every time you're asking for a miracle, and
Oh yeah, give it a DC or something. That could also be cool.
yeah,
I
give it
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, a level 1, could try to cast Raise Dead, but his DC is going to be really high.
Yeah. I like that actually. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
No, I was thinking, well, I wish there were more things to differentiate the different types of magic. If you're going to do that, rather than just juggling different slot and preparation systems, which has always struck me as one of the sacred cows of D&D that should be gotten rid of. Really,
I agree. I do not want to have to deal with that spell slots BS and the fancy and fire and forget casting system, because that has always been the biggest bunch of crap.
Switch to spell points.
Yeah, I want to stick with mana points, or basically every mage is a sorcerer. You know what you know, and that's what you should cast. You can cast a bunch of it, but that's all you do. Because that just makes more sense.
Spells are hard. Psionics are hard. I want to put psionics in my book, and I have like no idea where to start. Because every time a game tries to do psionics, it's usually kind of shitty. So.
Yeah, well, you saw what Pathfinder's solution was. They just gave up and said, it's just a different kind of magic.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to have to do, I think. And, I mean, some people don't like that. And it's like, oh, but it needs to be like this. It's like, well, you write it then.
Oh.
You write it, so give it to me, I'll put it in the book.
Consequences for failing that high DC cleric spell. Well, I'm building a chart of calamities that will befall your cleric when he fails to cast. Or worse, he rolls a 1. Because it's at that point your god actually gets pissed at you because you either said something wrong, did something wrong, or you asked him too many times, and maybe he cuts off your spell casting for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And
like, I'm not. This guy's constantly praying to me. I'm busy.
Yeah, kind of like, bitch. I got other people who need my help.
Yeah.
Why don't you tithe me some money and I'll think about granting your miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's how you should regenerate magic points as a cleric, by praying or giving donations to temples. Or...
Yeah.
I agree. And that would also give, priestly types a reason to go on an adventure. Because it's like, it's on behalf of the church. Well,
that could be an interesting mechanic. It's like, hey, you've used up all your spell slots. You want to regain them? Give away 20% of your wealth to the local church or temple or charity or whatever, and then you get all your spells back. And it doesn't matter how much your wealth is. It's just a flat 20%. So even at higher levels, it's still a big chunk of your money.
Hey Muppet, you get it. Risk versus reward. That's the whole name of my game there. I that's what I want. I want risk versus reward play. It should be a risk every time you cast a spell. If you're a cleric, you're casting and you're hoping your god still holds you in favor and doesn't get mad at you for calling on him too much. Especially if you're calling on behalf of a non-believer, which most other players are not going to be believers. It's like, well, why should I help him? He's not of my faith.
What about believers?
Mm-hmm. Well, believers would get a bonus. You get a +5 on your checks if the guy's a believer.
Yeah.
That also encourages the cleric to try to convert everybody in the party to his religion.
I'm gonna make a bard that's a believer.
Yeah, exactly. But then you got like Ragnar, the the hardcore barbarian who's like, I believe in only Crom. Crom says fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a problem. Like, not every god is as generous as the other gods. So, like, yeah, how do you deal with a cleric whose god is like some grim asshole on top of a mountain? Like,
And and why do these gods only intercede for clerics?
yeah,
If your barbarian is devout, okay, maybe not Crom because Crom laughs at you from his mountain, but
yeah,
maybe if he worships some other god, that god might help him out in some way.
yeah.
It feels like choosing a faith for your character should have some kind of impact in a world where gods are real.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I would say. I mean, that's kind of also the reason why I hesitate to call them clerics so much as like cultists or something else.
I also kind of always like the idea of like a sort of cleric character who like worships different gods. Like in the Mummy Benny, that character, he has like the necklace, all the different holy symbols, and like he just picks one depending on the situation. Just have somebody like that who's like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. Okay, this god, and then like he gets like a low level boon from that god or something. But then the
Yeah.
next time he might do it with a different god, and he gets a low level boon. So he's
Yeah.
not as powerful overall, but he just gets to have like different things from different gods.
That almost sounds like a
pantheist
subclass.
cleric class. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be kind of fun.
Yeah.
It'd be good if magic users could risk overextending themselves.
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
like if you're playing a cleric and you run out of magic points, spell slots, whatever, maybe you can enter into a covenant with your god to be able to cast an extra spell. So I promise I will convert 50 heathens in your name, something like that.
Yeah.
To get the juice to keep the magic going. Or a wizard maybe starts aging rapidly from using too
Yeah.
much magic,
Oh,
or,
yeah.
or something, loses hit points or permanent
Yeah.
hit points, or
Or-
something like that.
Or better yet, and you'll like this, they can overcast spells, but the thing is they have to tap into pure chaos magic, which warps them.
Yeah,
So,
Isn't that kind of what Wasteland did in Dragonlance? He learned like this new powerful magic, but in exchange, like he basically was like, physically frail and stuff like that.
I thought he was always frail because that was kind of how he turned out after his test.
I know I haven't read the first Dragonlance book in a while, but I thought he like did like a special test or something, and that's what made him frail. But it also gave him like the ice with the
Hourglass.
the hourglass.
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, that was I played a little game book on that. Yeah, at the end of it, Raistlin passes the test, but yeah, he's changed. I can't really say I'm a big Dragonlance guy, so I can't say more than that. I don't know much more. But I mean, you're always welcome to ask Yodano. He'll tell
Yeah.
you everything you want.
Yeah, definitely.
But okay, I mean, as long as we're talking about advancement, I think we kind of agree that front-loading characters is probably not as good as spreading it out over the character's career. Although with as short as time of people run games these days, I don't know.
Mhm.
I mean, 6 sessions.
Yeah.
I think you need to be able to do your character's keynote thing from first level. So you need to be able to cast a spell, or you need to be able to heal, or you need to be good at sneaking, or need to be good at fighting. I think one of my big issues with 5e is that the fighter doesn't really have any niche protection. They're not particularly better at fighting than anybody else. Whereas you look at Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and the fighter is the only one who continues to get better at fighting.
And that's
I
something I would do too.
I kind of tried to fix that with my fighter subclass that I wrote, the Lansknecht, and they get like different like special maneuvers. They like it's very HEMA flavored. They get like all these like HEMA like actual like abilities based on like old European sword fighting and stuff. So I tried to give them just more to do than just like I swing sword and I hit hard, and meanwhile the wizard just like fucking throwing fireworks everywhere and being cool. So yeah.
Yeah, I honestly think that fighters do need some love in some way.
Yeah.
Because past a certain point, their only value to the party is as meat shields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never liked that because it's like
Yeah.
the fighter should be the backbone of your party anyway.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
ways to give fighters cool flavor. 5e just doesn't do it because Wizards of the Coast doesn't know how to do flavor anymore.
No, well, that's because all their races are all gray skin suits that you put on, and
Yeah.
I mean, I just think they should be better at fighting than all the other classes. Like maybe they should have double their proficiency bonus for using weapons, same as rogues and that have expertise in various skills, something like that. And then allow people to try weird poncy combat maneuvers that they just come up with, but because their character is that much better at fighting, they can try and pull these off with a penalty, but because they're so much better at fighting than everybody else, they're more likely to pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to attempt a leg sweep or kick the back of someone's knees without needing a feat or a special class ability or something. Yeah, you should be able to throw dust in people's eyes, shit like that.
You could still balance that by just making it apply to specific weapon types. So like a level 1 is like you can pick sword or axe or club or whatever that you're good at. And then like you can start adding more proficiencies to that. But it's not like you're good with every weapon right off the bat.
Yeah,
and I think second edition kind of did that. It had like the skills and stuff, and third also.
Yeah, 3E did that with the feat selections that only fighters could select. My biggest what aggravated me the most about 3E and Pathfinder First Edition was the fact that so many feats were gated behind levels that you would never see those, no matter because your games would end too soon. So there were feats I never ever got to see in action.
Also, the feet bloat or whatever you call it, like that played into the whole build syndrome. Like I'm going to do this build, so I take this feat, and then I can take this feat, and I can take this feat, and I can take this feat, and I broke the entire game.
And that and skill and feat trees really pissed me off because I understood the reason for it, but at the same time I'm like, wow. So pretty much anytime I want to get into this, I'm going to have to take this, and this, whether I'm ever going to use it or not. Because half the time I had to pick up combat expertise, and I'm like, I never use this. Have to have power attack, but I never ever use this. So
but feats were great for character customization, and I kind of miss that they've kind of fallen away in 5th.
Yes. Yeah, and that's one of the things that kind of kept all your characters from being cookie cutter.
Yeah.
The problem is you can have a lot of fun with feats where it's just like pure flavor, but then nobody picks that because they want to pick the stuff that just makes you way better at combat. Nobody wants to pick the feat that just makes you like, a better alchemist or something. They want to take the feat that just gives you like a +2 to spell attacks.
And now, why would you take a feat where you can just take a stat bonus?
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is that element to it. No, well, that and one of the problems I feel like the game has had since 3rd edition really is the fact that only having 6 stats and then making the stats mean so much to the game. Because if you have a shitty dex, your character's life expectancy is pretty small because you depend on dex for so much. Because dex is it's your AC, it's your ability to hit with ranged weapons. It's also one of your core things that you need for dodging, for reflex saves. It's like, and then
it tends to be in every game, whatever it is, agility, reflexes, dexterity, whatever you call it. It always tends to be the one you want really high.
Mm-hmm. And strength was also a little bit over bloated too because it affects encumbrance, it affects your ability to hit with a melee weapon, and and your damage.
The way I always try to kind of fix that reliance on dex, it's like, dex is for dodging and for attacking and blah blah blah, and strength and all that stuff is useless. I try to ties different stats to different classes. So a barbarian might be able to do all that stuff with strength because they're a big muscly barbarian. A wizard who's like some Sherlock Holmesian guy, he might be able to use intelligence because he's doing like that Sherlock Holmes thing from the Robert Downey Jr. movies where he's like analyzing like the whole fight before it even happens. So it's like I use intelligence to dodge because I analyzed my opponent and like I know he's gonna swing and I'm gonna like sidestep it. Like I might not be as dexterous as him, but I'm smarter and I can analyze the situation. So that's how I kind of handle that. Just different classes have different stats that they primarily use.
Yeah, but I've seen MMA guys who are just about untouchable because they can read their opponent's movements before they attack and everything. And I'm like, does that necessarily make him a smart guy, or it just makes him?
Well, you could you could also tie it to wisdom. So an MMA fighter class, maybe he uses wisdom instead of intelligence for that. So
yeah, maybe so.
It's whatever class you want to use for it, whatever makes sense for that, or whatever stat you want to use that makes sense for that class. And it's not perfect by any means, but I think it's better than just like Dex is always dodging and being able to shoot accurately, even if you're a wizard who's very intelligent and you still want to be good at a gun. Like you might not be as dexterous, but you can analyze things way better. So,
well, I don't think you guys ever actually did answer the question. If you did, I've probably forgotten because it's been a little bit, but. What actual XP or advancement systems do you guys actually like or dislike?
I don't know. Maybe it makes me sound a bit sparkle trolly, but I do kind of like the milestones or session based or whatever. I like stuff like in Savage Worlds where it's like, depending on the length of the campaign, you might get a level every session. You might get one every 10. It's just whatever the goal of the campaign is.
So, yeah, kind of like depending.
Yeah.
What about you, Graham?
I tend to prefer to do it around the conclusion of big events in a game. So
a milestone.
Not exactly a milestone, but just something that boosts that sense of accomplishment you get at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think you should get some kind of an advancement for accomplishing something big. It's like, oh, we just took down, Orcus. Oh, that deserves a level, whether you earned it or not.
It's like, no, that only gave you 3,000 XP, and you need 3,001. So sorry.
Yeah, that's so shitty.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't do that to characters. I will never do that to a character.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just. On the one hand, I do kind of agree with my DM's, thing for like 1,000 per hour type thing, because then that's you're being rewarded for playing. On the other hand, and I hate to sound like this, but if you have like 6 or 7 people at the table, and you're getting 1,000 per hour, and inevitably you end up with that one person who is on their phone the entire time and doesn't care until it's his turn.
Yeah.
I call that bump on a log syndrome.
Yeah.
It's.
And go ahead.
I would see that mostly in my friend's game. Because he used to run, literally, we used to sit down at the table with like over 10 players, which to me was way too much anyway.
Yeah.
But it's like, we'd go through an entire game session and like maybe 2 people would be just totally quiet the entire game or have their own little conversation, not having to do with anything else outside the game except when they were called on to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I dislike that form of gaming intensely.
I also just hate when it's a character's turn and it's like, okay, so what's going on? Meanwhile, everyone else is like completely engaged in the scene. They're like throwing things back and forth, and then this one guy just brings it to a screeching halt. It's like, what's going on? What's happening? And you're like, come on, dude. Like, I know we're on Discord and it's hard to pay attention, like a bit harder than in real life, but you can at least try.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the reasons why I used to like Torg, was the fact that you could. Even if it wasn't your turn, you had a hand of cards that you could play on anybody's turn at any time. So,
Yeah.
like if it's the bad guy's turn and he's about to whoop your friend's ass, you may have a thwart action card that you decide to slap down just before the bad guy gets to do his thing and get to save your buddy. And you're always kind of sitting back and looking for your chance to assist each other and cooperate.
Yeah.
And I think more games should be like that.
Yeah, I agree. I actually
'Cause-
like support classes like that are just there to like assist other players in some way and make them like do cool shit.
Well, I mean, not so much as I don't want to make it a class-based function, but I mean, like everybody should have that function. Because the worst thing in the world is just sitting around and waiting for your turn. Especially if if you have like the wizard who is busy flipping through his spells and like, oh, I don't know if I should cast this or not. Well, shoot or get off the pot.
Yeah.
Or you got the player who's like, okay, well, it's not my turn, so I'm going to go get up and, go get some more Mountain Dew and Cheetos or whatever.
Yeah.
By the time it gets back around, you're sitting there waiting on him to get back to the table.
Sometimes you gotta get Cheetos, though. I mean, it's pretty important.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just maybe that's just a me thing.
I mean, you are an old grumpy man, so
I am. I'm the oldest grumpy man in this chat currently, but that's okay.
It's not the years, it's the mileage.
yeah.
True. Well, in that case, I've been rode hard and put away wet too.
But enough about what you did last Saturday.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't necessarily know that we've even solved anything with XP and advancement.
I don't think if it could be solved, somebody would have done it already. Like we've been going on since the 70s at the very least, and even longer if you go back to war games and all that stuff. If people knew how to solve it, we would have had the solution already. I'm not that egotistical to think that little me in 2020, what is it, 23, it can just all of a sudden make the perfect XP system that everyone's happy with.
Rogue Scholar, you don't think I'm older than you? I'm going to be 50 here in a few months, so I don't know how old you are, but I don't mind admitting it. I'm okay. I've grudgingly accepted that it's better to turn 50 than not to.
I'm going to turn 40 in less than 2 years, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Oh my gosh.
It's not as bad as they say.
Yeah.
It isn't. Although I do warn you that at 45 the check engine light comes on, and you better take notice.
That engine light came on when I was like 15. Like there's a reason I'm on 100% disability, dude. So
Cal, I would not have believed you were that old, except I've actually seen you on camera. It's like, yeah, you have a much younger man's sense of humor and wisdom.
Well, wisdom. I mean, come on.
Well, okay, maybe that was the wrong word. For wisdom. Definitely a sense of humor.
37. I'm not old.
I'm not old yet. Yeah.
I got better.
All right, guys. Well, I guess we kind of beat this horse a little bit. And and David's not here to talk to us about it anyway. So, but I understand where he was coming from. Also,
I missed all that. So
Well, he was.
Just replay.
It was a miscommunication. He thought I was talking about having to train and it leveling you. Like, no, I was talking about how it worked in Wolf Cyclopedia.
yeah.
were you trained to basically confirm the leveling up?
Yeah.
In Wolf Cyclopedia, that's the weapon proficiency and stuff for fighters, so you can like train to basically gain like special maneuvers and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's like I pointed out, it's like even in reality, guys who are dedicated fighters for MMA and all that still go back and train, especially under new styles and stuff if they run into something they've never seen before.
Yeah.
And how, there's lots of tropey movies out there where, guys get their butts kicked and then they get trained by, the master, and then they come back and they whoop that guy's butt.
Mm-hmm.
Rocky being like the preeminent one. Who remembers Rocky 3? Oh, Rocky got his ass kicked by Clubber Lang, but he came back and trained and whooped his ass. Or
Yeah.
Rocky
That's like
got his
pretty much
ass.
all the Rocky movies after one.
Yeah, Rocky got his ass kicked by Apollo Creed in Rocky 1, but he trained and came back and whooped him in Rocky 2.
Yep.
Or endless kung fu movies.
Endless
He beat
kung
me
fu.
once.
Yeah.
But now I know the style of the venomous monkey.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in Rocky 3, he literally starts training with Apollo Creed's trainer because, like, beat Clubber Lang, who's like a brute force like barbarian, you have to have speed and sting like move like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I think it is. Like
Yes.
so, like Rocky had to like completely change up his whole like approach, and yeah, I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah, and I don't know what he did with Ivan Drago, because it's just like basically he just went in there and just took a beating.
Yeah, basically just be a machine.
I'm gonna let you beat the shit out of me until you get tired.
Yep.
It's not much of a plan, but it's a plan.
It worked, so
it worked. It's a Rocky movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that I still think it's applicable, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, instead of it being you pay for training for gold kind of thing, it seems like more like something you would want to do as a quest or an activity or as a GM thing.
It can be cool.
Yeah. Oh, your entire party got your ass handed to you by Sir Scumbag, and now Sir Scumbag's trainer comes out and says, well, he went bad, but I'll teach you how to beat him now.
I like when like legendary sword fighters are kind of like treated as like gunslingers in the Old West. Like you remember in Red Dead Redemption when you find that old gunslinger and he teaches you some new stuff, and there's like all these stories about him. Like some old sword fighters should be like that. So you're trying to find some like 60-year-old dude, some Zorro dude, like because you want to like learn his techniques that he perfected over like the last decades.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that you're dealing with a game where gods really exist and stuff. So
yeah,
if there's like a demigod of war or something that's wandering around, it's like, why wouldn't you want to go train with that guy?
Yeah,
I'm not left-handed.
Go in the hyperbolic time chamber and yeah.
that turns into Dragon Ball.
Yeah, I mean that's fun.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Did we solve anything? Maybe not. At the very least, we got a good look at it, and we got some different takes on it. So.
Yep, I agree.
Anything you guys want to add before we shut down then?
I'm gonna be doing one shots with my friend Crossface later. So if you guys want to check that out, that'll be in about a little less than 4 hours, I believe. So.
Mm-hmm. I always want to hang out with you guys, but Crossface's time seems like it's so limited. So.
Yeah, that's why it's called one shots, because he only has an hour. Because he has two kids. He has a newborn. He has a wife. So yeah, he doesn't get to hang out that long. So we call it one shots. We just talk for an hour, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Well, chances are with the weather around here, I'll be available tomorrow too to do something because chances are I'm going to get snowed in.
Nice.
Yeah.
So. I don't know. If you guys want to do another shot again tomorrow, we always can. We can always find something else to talk about for sure.
Yeah.
It's tabletopless tomorrow night, and I tend to bank sleep ahead of schedule. But yeah, depending, I might be up for something.
All right. Well, I can always count on Victor because he never sleeps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think I have Curse. Well, actually, no. Do I have Curse of Strahd tomorrow? I can't remember because one of my players he's on chemo right now, and every other week he has to fly to Texas or something to get like his treatment.
Wow.
And I can never remember which week it is, so I'll have to see.
No kidding, Texas, huh?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, he's got lymphoma, but luckily it's the less lethal one. Is it non-Hodgkin's or Hodgkin's? I can't remember which one's the not bad one, or not bad, but yeah, you know what I mean.
I wouldn't want it.
Yeah, no, but
one of them's worse than the other.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, gang, thanks for hanging out with us, and hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, this was a little bit of an impromptu one today, so there wasn't a lot of heads up. I didn't expect to be sick today, so but hey, maybe tune in tomorrow, and maybe we'll have another one for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Till then, y'all take care.
Laters.
Look! The Dungeons and Dragons ride!
Exercise.